welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Codo, aka Codo Man. When it comes to films that I talk about in Codo Cinema, animated films come to mind. Sure, there's a lot of animated films from studios like Disney, Warner Brothers, DreamWorks, Fox, Sony, Paramount, among many others. However, there is one animated film that came out prior to the acquisition of the Disney and 20th Century Fox merger. And that animated film would be the animated spy comedy Spies in Disguise. Yep, you heard that right. Spies in Disguise is a 2019 American animated spy comedy film, and it was actually produced by Blue Sky Studios while being distributed by 20th Century Fox. This actually came out during the time when Disney bought 20th Century Fox. Spies in Disguise is loosely inspired by the 2009 animated short Pigeon Impossible by Lucas Martel. The film is directed by Troy Kwan and Nick Bruno from a screenplay by Brad Copeland and Lloyd Taylor, with a story by Cindy Davis. The film itself stars Will Smith and Tom Holland, alongside Rashida Jones, Ben Mendelsohn, Reba McEntire, Rachel Brosnahan, Karen Gillan, DJ Khaled, and Masi Oka in supporting roles. So basically, what is the plot? Well, here's the thing. The plot itself follows an agent named Lance Sterling, voiced by Will Smith, who is accidentally transformed into a pigeon by an intelligent young scientist named Walter Beckett, who is being played by Tom Holland. So then the two must work together to stop a revenge-seeking cybernetic terrorist and return the agent to his human form. Sounds like a spy plot, which it is, but in disguise as a pigeon. Get it? Will Smith voices a pigeon. He one time voiced a shark slayer in Shark Tale. Now he's voicing a pigeon in Spies in Disguise. So, you guys are probably wondering how the film went. Well, despite the film coming out in December of 2019 at the time of the Disney and Fox merger, it was released to positive reviews from critics. Which, to be fair, that's actually pretty good, because when I saw the trailer for the first time, I was a little mixed, but for a while, it looked pretty good in terms of the animation. However, it didn't do well at the box office. Maybe it was because of the competition between Uncut Gems, Little Women, and possibly of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which, to be fair, took over the box office. Yep. But the question remains, what are my thoughts of the film? Well, as I mentioned, judging from the trailer, it looked promising. And I actually went to see Spies in Disguise back in theaters when theaters were open. And long story short, I thought the film was pretty good. So, yeah. So let me spy on the film just to see what's up. So let me share my thoughts on the film. And by the way, spoiler alert for those who have not seen the film. So anyway, the film opens up with Lance Sterling, voiced by Will Smith, who is a cocky secret agent of HTUV, Honor, Trust, Unity, and Valor. Yeah, I know, it's a long name. So Lance Sterling is sent to recover an attack drone from Japanese arms dealer Katsu Kimura, voiced by Masi Oka in Japan. As soon as the buyer, cybernetically enhanced terrorist named Killian, voiced by Ben Mendelsohn, he arrives, and Sterling breaks in against the orders of HTUV. Director Joy Jenkins, voiced by Reba McEntire. So basically, Lance defeats Kimura and his gang and manages to escape with the briefcase containing the drone. Somehow, Sterling returns to HTUV headquarters, I'm just going to say headquarters for short, headquarters to confront Walter Beckett, voiced by Tom Holland, who Walter is a socially inept MIT graduate and outcast young scientist for equipping non-lethal weapons into his suit. So apparently in the opening of the film, Walter switches Lance's weapons, lethal weapons, I guess. Basically, weapons that could be used safer rather than harming. Basically, the one weapon that Lance used from Walter, surprisingly, was the kitty glitter. It was the kitty glitter, which surprisingly, I was like, okay, that was a bit of a distraction because it actually distracted the members, some of the members that Lance was fighting off. So that was a distraction. Although, knowing Lance, he would rather use lethal weapons rather than, if you know what I'm saying, the weapons that Walter provided. So anyway, Walter tries to convince Sterling that there is a more peaceful way to save the world. Okay, I could definitely see what Walter was trying to go for, but sometimes there's a peaceful way to do it, and there's a more hurtful way too. Technically, or lethal, I should say. There's a peaceful way and a lethal way. Kind of rhymes a little bit. So yeah. So then Sterling fires Walter Beckett before Walter can explain his latest invention of biodynamic concealment, which can actually make somebody disappear for effect. Yes, disappear for effect. Yep. By the way, some of you guys may or may not notice that the character designs for the characters in Spies in Disguise look so similar, look a lot like their voice actors. Like Lance Sterling being voiced by Will Smith, his character design looks like Will Smith. Tom Holland, who voices Walter Beckett, looks like Tom Holland, which really surprises me a bit because I wouldn't know. I didn't even realize that until I watched the film again. I was like, wow, they really look a lot like their actors, but in animated form. Because this is also coming from a studio who made the Ice Age movies. And that's right, Blue Sky Studios made Ice Age, and this film, Spies in Disguise, the animation in this, particularly the character designs, look really, really good. I mean, I might have missed a few character designs that flew over my head, but hey, it literally got me, and I would tip my hat to the animators for the amount of effort and work they put into the animation. So anyway, going back to the film, somehow Lance Sterling discovers that the briefcase is to be empty, and somehow the Joy Jenkins discovered that too. Only to be confronted by Marcy Capel, voiced by Rashida Jones, along with Eyes, voiced by Karen Gillan, and Ears, voiced by DJ Khaled. Marcy Capel is an internal affairs agent who reveals footage of Sterling, who shockingly is disguised, actually Killian, in a holographic disguise of Sterling. Oh boy, yep, looks like Killian just stole Sterling's identity or something, or facial look, and somehow leaving with the drone labeling him as a traitor. Yes, they actually label Sterling as a traitor, which is not true because Killian, who's being voiced by Ben Mendelsohn, Killian alone literally stole Sterling's face. Sterling escapes the headquarters and decides to track down Walter to help him disappear. Meanwhile, Killian breaks into the weapons facility. And yes, he does break into the weapons facility. So, while searching Walter's home for the invention, Sterling unknowingly ingests the concoction and transforms into a pigeon by undergoing chromothripsis, if I'm saying that correctly. Okay, so basically, Lance Sterling drinks Walter's, drinks the whole, the the lab. He drinks what is basically the liquid that makes him invisible, but unknowingly transforms him into a pigeon. And what I really like about the pigeon transformation is the final form, where Lance is a pigeon, where he comes out as a pigeon and screams at the top of his pigeon head. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I saw this in the trailer too, and the film. I got a huge laugh out of that. I mean, come on, seeing a pigeon. Oh my god. I'm sorry. I got it funny. It's so hilarious. I mean, I can't stop laughing at that. I mean, it's just so funny. Like once somebody turns into a pigeon, not even realizing what just happened. It's just so funny. There are also other moments where Lance was trying to look at Walter, but the only thing Lance can see as a pigeon is his butt and Walter's face at the same time. I mean, the delivery of it is actually hilarious, but also what really strikes me the most is that pigeons have a field of vision that is even greater, and it's nearly 360 degrees with a very, very narrow binocular portion in front. So pigeons do have 360 degree vision, although it's near that. It's near. So it's near that 360 degree vision. So yeah. Oh, and by the way, another moment is when Pigeon Lance is so mad, he stomps his little pigeon feet on the ground when he's walking towards Walter and demands him to unbird him. Yes, Lance wants Walter to unbird him, although technically Lance birded himself. Oh, and Walter has a pet pigeon too, named Lovey. Yes, Walter does have a pet pigeon named Lovey. Hey, two pigeons. There's two pigeons, but there's gonna be more pigeons, by the way. So anyway, before Walter can start making an antidote to change him back, Marcy and the other HTUV agents chase down the duo through the city, but they escape in Sterling's spy car. By the way, before that, Lance fired Walter again, double fired because Walter turned Lance into a pigeon after wanting help from Walter because Lance wants to be invisible after being falsely accused. Yeah, but somehow Lance was about to work on a triple fire after attempting to climb into his own car with Walter's help. By the way, the chase began, and I'll admit, it's a pretty cool chase because of how Lance and Walter try to operate the car through auto drive and decide what weapons to use, whether it's oil slick or missiles. Even Walter's pigeon Lovey doesn't even know what's going on. I mean, she just sits there like, okay. I also like the slow motion sequence where Walter and Lance were still in the car, but the car drives off the bridge. It goes into slow motion, like it's one of those like cliche slow motions, like where something hits a person and just like gets hurt. Oh my goodness, it's still hilarious. It's still hilarious though. All right. Okay, so both Walter and Lance track down Kimura to a resort in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and while they're there, Lance actually meets up with other pigeons. So technically, Lance is a part of a flock. A flock means meaning like a group, which is another word, which I'm pretty sure is another word for flock. So yes, there's basically more pigeons in this film, which I actually kind of like. Plus, Lance begins to adapt into the pigeon world too, especially when he starts eating off from the ground, as would I'm pretty sure most birds would do. So there, Lance and Walter learn of Killian's whereabouts in Venice, Italy, And also, I also liked how Lance tries to knock out Kimura with his pigeon feathers, but not really, not really. And he misses his hands. Lance misses his hands, basically because he's a pigeon. Because he's a pigeon, he's a bird fighting a human. Yes, a bird fighting a human, which, oh man, it's kind of funny still. So anyway, Marcy and the agents arrive at Playa del Carmen so they can capture Lance and Walter, but somehow in a crazy chase in another crazy chase sequence, Walter tries to escape with Lance by doing like, like one of those like weird video game moments. Yeah, he tried to do that. And I did get some Spider-Man vibes because Tom Holland also played Spider-Man through his gymnastics and acrobatic movements, but somehow that attempt failed in Spies in Disguise. Plus a little swear word being dropped from Lance. Yep. And we do get a hilarious fight scene where Lance and Walter tries to escape and fight off the guards, especially with Walter's gadgets. Plus, one of the gadgets that Walter used is a truth serum. Plus another weapon he also used is like a sticky string, kind of like one of those weird sticky strings that he also used to stop the agents, which I also thought was pretty clever too. So, on our way to Venice, Walter attempts to make the antidote, but ultimately fails. And we do get this conversation between Lance and Walter about how things can go bad, but sometimes even though Walter wants to find ways to make it peaceful, while Lance realizes that look, there are things like there are bad guys out there that do bad things, and like they gotta fight fire with fire. You get that? Kind of like lethal, pretty lethal, right? But sometimes, even though there's no peaceful way, but sometimes there can be a peaceful way too to take out the bad guys too, which I know can be debatable, but sometimes there are other ways too. So arriving in Venice, Walter is confronted by the agents who are unaware of Sterling's condition, and one of the agents, and I'm pretty sure it was from Marcy, revealing that she knows about Wendy, Walter's mother, who was a police officer who died on duty. Marcy tries to convince him to help turn Sterling in, but somehow Walter refuses. And then a drone distracts the agents and allows Walter and Sterling to escape. The two discover the drone carrying the database, and Walter manages to retrieve it. And we do get another crazy chase sequence with the drone, and plus Lance learns how to fly. Sort of. With the help of the pigeons. Because yes, the pigeons are still there. And somehow Killian shows up and takes the database and prepares to kill Walter. Okay, what really strikes me the most about that part was how Killian shows up and just knocks out Walter with his metal hand. Oh man, that was brutal. That would have killed him. That would have killed Walter immediately. But man, surprisingly he was still alive. But that ring to it after being hit by that metal arm, that was brutal. It was brutal. Thankfully, there were hundreds of pigeons in the surrounding area to distract Killian and flee. By the way, Walter uses breadcrumbs to distract Killian. And with the help of pigeons, knowing pigeons love breadcrumbs. So Killian is still disguised as Sterling once more. He still escapes the HTUV, shaking Marcy's suspicious of Sterling upon her seeing him with a robot hand. Also, now they realize there's something different about Sterling. There's a robot hand, but I don't think it was Sterling. Yep, something's up. Okay, so yes. So basically, Walter and Lance are in a submarine, and Walter reveals he planted a tracking device on Killian and locates him at a weapons facility. So they are actually tracking him down. Plus, Walter manages to perfect the antidote and successfully turns Sterling human again. It turns out Walter was using Lovey's feather that first time when he made that concealment for the first time. But somehow, when making the antidote, he uses Lance's feathers. But it turns out he was using Lovey's feathers. So there was a little error, but somehow learned from his mistakes. So Sterling turns human again. They reach Killian's hideout, but Sterling is concerned about Walter's safety and sends him away in the submarine. Once again, Sterling confronts Killian, but gets knocked out and captured as Killian reveals he has mass-produced hundreds of drones to target everyone at the agency using the database as revenge for killing his crew in a past mission led by Sterling. Okay, so for the villain, basically, Killian, being voiced by Ben Mendelsohn, has a backstory of how his own people were killed in a previous mission led by Sterling, and it was people that Killian cared about. Yes, they were bad guys, but it was people that he cared about, which explains why Killian is out for revenge and framing Sterling. That moment alone, that is something that many people can relate to, because sometimes for those people who care about that, it gets bad, especially how a hero defeats a villain's people who have so much dedication and care for that. When you think of villains, especially with past villains who want to sympathize with, like how can I go out with this? You can sympathize with villains, especially with Killian. One example, Thanos. We care about Thanos in Infinity War because we know what his motivation was. He wants to wipe out half of humanity. We know why he's doing it. The same can be said with the Joker in 2019's Joker. We want to know what he's been through, what the villain has been through, and why the villain is becoming evil, and why he wants to go out for revenge. And it made sense. Because a villain does have a soft spot. A villain has a soft spot. I know people are saying like, well, look, villains don't have soft spots. Well, they do. They do have a soft spot, just like the hero has a soft spot, which is something that I really liked in Spies in Disguise. We got to learn that Killian has a group of people that he really cares about, but now they were wiped out by Sterling, and that is pretty sad too. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, Walter and Lance notice. Not Walter. Killian and Sterling notice Walter returning in the submarine, and Killian destroys the submarine unknowingly to them. But somehow Walter survives with the help of one of his inventions, the inflatable hug. That's right, the inflatable hug. And when Walter frees Sterling, the two escape and contact Marcy for support as the drones approach the headquarters in Washington, D.C. Walter attempts to hack into Killian's bionic arm, but when Killian realizes this, he tries to flee via air with a drone, but Walter catches up. Basically, there is a final battle between the drone, Killian, the drones, and the agents, which I actually liked because they used Walter's gadgets. They used some of Walter's gadgets, and it was actually pretty clever. Especially the moments of the truth serum where it accidentally hits both Lance, Marcy, and Killian, revealing their truth. And it was actually pretty funny. It's hilarious. I also liked how the other pigeons joined the fight too. It's hilarious. It's just hilarious. Somehow, Walter risks his life by trapping Killian in the inflatable hug and deactivates the villain's arm, as Walter himself falls, but Sterling, transforming himself back into a pigeon, successfully flies for the first time and carries him to safety with the help of other pigeons. Somehow, Killian is found and arrested. And despite saving the world, Sterling, back in his human form, and Walter are almost fired for disobedience and treason. So, triple fired. There's a triple fired for Walter. Must be a new world record right there. I'm sorry. It's just hilarious. I know it sounds cliched. The film itself, it does sound cliche, but at the same time, it's so good and it's so funny at the same time. However, Lance and Walter are quickly rehired by the HTUV as the agency could learn from Walter's more peaceful ways of handling villainy. And that's it. That's the film. And to be honest, I like the film, and it's funny. I mean, the humor is there. The characters are not as memorable, but they're pretty good too. The voice acting is solid, and one thing I do like how they try to delve deep into the villain Killian a little more in this film. But other than that, it's still a pretty good film, pretty good animated film to watch. I mean, yeah, it's a little cliched because it's a spy film that borrows from other spy films like the James Bond films. Plus, it's still a good film to watch. It's a fun film too. I mean, it's also a shame too because here's the reason why: Spies in Disguise is the final film to be distributed by Blue Sky Studios before the studio was shut down on April 7th of this year. April 7th, 2021, this year. So not too long ago. Oh man. Plus, it was also the only Blue Sky film to be released after the Disney acquisition of 20th Century Fox, which is a real shame because Blue Sky Studios, they don't have that many films under their belt. I mean, sure, there are a few good films for Blue Sky that I actually enjoyed, mainly Ice Age, Robots, the Peanuts movie, Horton Hears a Who, Spies in Disguise. Yeah, those films, they are pretty good animated films. And while, yes, they do have their flaws, Blue Sky Studios has made some of the most successful franchises. And Horton Hears a Who and the Peanuts movie were critically praised films. I mean, the reason why, some said that the reason why Blue Sky Studios was shut down due to the Disney acquisition, but also to the response of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, which is a real shame too. Plus, I really, really want to see a sequel to Spies in Disguise. It looked like a promising film with a promising sequel that could have been made, but that was not announced. That sequel was never announced, but it was an idea, a possible idea, because in 2021, the directors of Spies in Disguise discussed having the story continue into a different kind. Kind of like a different kind of Star Trek themed world. Even Will Smith and Tom Holland said that they would love to work again and to see the characters coming together and continuing their adventure. I mean, the reception of the film is still good. I mean, the critics really loved it. But, box office-wise, not so much. So, I say it depends. It depends on if the sequel would move forward or not. I mean, even though Blue Sky Studios got shut down, it sounds like I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, could a different studio do it? There's a possibility. I mean, I don't see why not. But other than that, I mean, it's still a good film. And hey, if you like Spies in Disguise, and if you have seen Spies in Disguise, I mean, it's a pretty decent film to watch. And I still love the film. Still a pretty good animated film to watch. Anyway, thank you for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codo Man. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.